When Dan and Dominic asked me to speak on the Gospel Work Summit, I'll be honest with you, I started scratching my head, and I think I had a flashback to my 20s, remembering a gospel reading that was that particular Sunday, and that I think it goes a little something like this. The kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out to hire laborers, for his vineyard. And this landowner went out and hired people at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then went out at 9 o'clock and 12 o'clock and again at 3 o'clock. And then at the end of the day, he went out to the area where the men were, and he said, "Why haven't you worked today?" And he put them out into his vineyard. And I can remember, when he paid those people, he started with the last people, the people that worked at the end of the day, and worked his way back to the first. And I can remember in my 20s thinking to myself, I don't think I'm going to hire Jesus as my HR director, because if he did that in real life, on day number 2 at 5 o'clock, everybody would show up at the same time and get their pay. So in my early 20s, I pretty much said to Jesus, I said, "Jesus, you take care of Sunday, and I'll take care of Monday through Saturday." And thanks be to God, he's changed my thinking in that regard. My talk today is entitled "How God is Building a Better World in My Life." And I'll be honest with you, man, before the age of 40, my focus was singular in nature. Personal success and gratification was how I was going to build a better world. I wasn't interested in building a better world. I was interested in building a bigger bank account. The Holy Trinity, that wasn't the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. It was me, myself, and I. And I look back at that, and I'm so glad that he rewired my thinking, to say the least. I'm a broken pencil, man, and this is God's love story that you're about to hear. I had a little bit of background. I had broken all 10 commandments, men, by the age of 17 years old. Yes, and that includes the 5th commandment, "Thou shalt not kill." My goal from very early in life was to become an NFL player. Fast forward to around 21 years old, I was a 2-time All-American. The Buffalo Bills had showed up to 2 or 3 of my football games, and I was ready to achieve my goal in life. But alcoholism and drug abuse prevented that from happening. So I sat there at the age of 21, and my entire goal in life, everything I had put all my energy into, had crash landed. So I said to myself, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to make a name for myself in life? I still had a civil engineering degree. So I decided, okay, I'm going to make my name in the business world. I started off saying to myself, if I can make $100,000 a year, I'll be happy. I'll be successful. I'll be able to make an impact in life. And, I started in downtown Boston early in my career in the early 90s, working on the Big Dig. It was the largest construction project in the world at the time. And I learned a tremendous amount. And I worked very hard there for a couple, 3 years. But ultimately, that wasn't achieving my financial goals that I needed. And I wanted a raise, and my boss wouldn't give it to me. So I picked up the Boston Globe that Sunday, and I can remember it was the winter time, I think about December, and it was snowing. And I picked up the Boston Globe, and it said, Tampa contractor looking for civil engineers. And I said to myself, geez, I think I can play that role. I can fit in with that role. So what I did is at the age of 24 years old, I moved my entire life. Thanks be to God, my girlfriend at the time, my wife and I, came with me. But I started working for this contractor in Central Florida. And to be honest with you, man, I had already conquered alcoholism and drug abuse. But now I added a new ism to my tool chest, and that was called workaholism. And you may be familiar with this. It's where you work 14 hours a day, 6 days a week to reach your goals in life, and you largely ignore your family. By the time you get home at the end of the day, you're so busy and tied up with the big issues that you dealt with during the day that you don't even have time for your family. But so I moved down to Florida and worked very hard into my early 30s. And I had achieved God had achieved a great amount of success in my career. I had the access to the private jets. I had a $30 million office, luxury tickets to all the professional sporting games, luxury vehicles, anything that you wanted, anything that this world tells us, men, it gives us value. I had it in my early 30s. And I want to just elaborate a little bit on the private jets. Everyone talks about private jets. You hear about that on TV all the time. You don't have to call 2 months ahead of time to get your tickets, okay? You don't have to show up to the airport 2 hours ahead of time. You don't have to walk through, take your shoes off at the airport, walk through the metal detector and do the touchdown Jesus thing, and then put your belt and your shoes back on. You don't have to do any of that. You call a day ahead of time. You show up to the location where the plane is. You put your bag in the plane, and off you go. And the only reason I elaborate on that, man, is as I reflect back, it would cost about $5,000 or $6,000 an hour to run that plane. And I'd sit back with a nice drink in my hand. And you know what, man? At that time, there were poor and impoverished children all over this world that were dying of starvation. Yet I felt the need to ride around in a private jet. I rubbed shoulders with some of the biggest dignitaries in the world, took pictures with presidents, went on hunting trips with mayors. Everything that this world can tell you is important and valuable. I did it in my 30s. I used to walk around with $2,000 or $3,000 in my pocket, man. Not because I ever needed it, because I had a gold card that paid for everything, but because when I pulled that wad out of my pocket, it would make me feel good, and it would make someone else look up to me. But St. Paul's first letter to Timothy, chapter 6, verse 10, for the love of money is the root of all evil. In my mid-30s, I thought I had conquered everything that this world had to conquer. Even though I had a failed NFL career, now my workaholism was paying off. But man, most of us remember the great financial crisis of 2008. And that woke me up like no tomorrow. Okay. The company that I was with was a 50-year-old company. We had been doing $125 million of business a year, making $30 million in profit. And overnight, because of that great financial crisis, it all came tumbling down. And that company decided that they were going to go bankrupt. And all I will say, men, with regards to bankruptcy is this. Bankruptcy is the process by which a company continues to work for the client that they're working for and get paid, and you have someone else, a bunch of subcontractors, work for you and not pay them. So knowing that was the process that the direction the company was going to take, I wasn't going to have any part of that. And I let them know that. And they let me go on December 24th, Christmas Eve of 2009. See, I thought I had climbed the ladder of success, man, and I did, only to find out it was up against the wrong wall. There's a quote from a financial writer. His name's Morgan Housel, and I love it. It goes something like this, and I'll read it. It's, if your expectations grow faster than your money, you'll never be happy no matter how much you accumulate. And I tell you, man, even though I had everything this world tells you is valuable and important, I was hollow on the inside. I was using my personal success to define my value as a human being. As I reflect back at that stage of my life, I say to myself, what do the 10 richest men in the world have in common? They got a lot of things in common. They probably have jets, fancy houses, vacation homes. But all 10 of those men, heroic men, they have 12 divorces between them. In fact, the richest man in the world has 3 divorces. Now, I'm not judging them. All I'm making is a correlation between monetary success in the Christian life and the Christian world that we're called to live. I had spent the first 40 years of my life, man. I wasn't building a better world. I was building a bigger bank account for myself. But you know, God rebooted all of that in 2008. Excuse me. I was bankrupt as an individual, but not just financially, man. I think we have to understand that there's more than one form of bankruptcy. There's financial bankruptcy, there's spiritual bankruptcy, and there's emotional bankruptcy. And guess what? I had checked all 3 of those boxes at that point in time in my life. And it's really sad as I look back and I reflect on it now. So what did I do? I was 39, 40 years old. I had lived the high life. And now I had hit rock bottom. So what did I do? I was raised as a good Catholic Christian boy. So I started taking my relationship with God seriously. And I went into the chapel one day. I'll never forget this as long as I live. And I said to God, I walked into the chapel. I didn't know what to say and what to do. But I just sat down and I said, God, you have given me so much and I have given you so little. What is it? What is the next chapter of my life? What can I do, Lord, to start serving you instead of serving myself? And you know, man, he hit me harder than a 260-pound fullback could. And he said, Jeff, I want you to start JMJ site development, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph site development. And I'll never forget looking up, it wasn't an exposed monstrance, it was just a tabernacle. And I looked up at Jesus and I said, in the tabernacle, I said, Jesus, I said, you really have to be kidding me. It's 2009. There's no work in Central Florida, no site work in Central Florida, yet you want me to start a construction company. I can't do it. And I'll never forget, man, it's when I started studying scripture a little bit, and he hit me right away again. He said, Jeff, he said, Philippians 4:13, he says, I can do all things through him who gives me strength. And that was all I needed as I walked out of that chapel that day. I was going to start JMJ site development. And more importantly, I was going to start focusing. I'm reminded at this point in time of Matthew chapter 25, verse 40. What you do for the least of my brethren, you do for me. See, the hound of heaven took 40 years to track me down so that now I could start not just focusing on him, but focusing on his needy children around this world. So we started up JMJ site development in 2010, and we needed a mission statement. What was our mission statement going to be? So I chose Matthew 16:26. For what would it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? That meant so much to me because I had so much experience with extremely wealthy men, guys who are worth hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, even one billionaire, yet they were prisoners of their money. They had forfeited their soul. JMJ site development, I'll tell you a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about how JMJ is building a better world. But I want to give you the context. I didn't just wake up one day and click my heels and decide to start giving millions of dollars to people I would never meet. It's a process that God brought me through. Every proposal that leaves our office, heroic men, has healing water from Lourdes that is blessed on it. We choose, men, we have something that we call principle over principle. principle, Principle, over Principal, choosing the right thing over the monetary thing. And I'm going to just give you one example of that as a situational awareness. There's a fellow business owner of mine who I had known for 20 years. And work had got slow for him, so we had him work on one of our jobs. And he has a business partner who I had never met and didn't know if he was Christian or not, but Jay, the other owner of the company, is Christian. Well, they started doing some work for us, and one thing led to another. There was a little bit of a conflict. And that conflict led to Jay's business partner writing me nasty letters and threatening litigation. And it wasn't a big item. I think, when we had done the research, it was, we thought we owed them $20,000 and they thought we owed them $80,000. And it got really bad really quick, Ben. Okay. Lawyers got involved and one thing led to another. And I can remember one day playing, and I recommend this, playing Bible roulette. I said, Lord, how do I solve this problem? What is it that I can do to alleviate this? This is a fellow Christian brother. We're doing business together. It shouldn't lead to a legal battle. In Matthew 5:25, opened up the Bible, Matthew 5:25. And and I'll paraphrase here, it's, come to good terms with your accuser quickly on your way to court, so that your accuser doesn't hand you over to the judge who hands you over to the magistrate, and then you end up in jail. So immediately after reading that Bible passage, I called up my friend Jay. I said, Jay, listen, you think we owe you $80,000. I think we owe you 20. Why don't we just meet in the middle at 40? Let me write you a check. You give me a final lien release, and we can do the Christian thing here. And he paused for a minute. He said, I'm going to have to call my business partner back. And he called me back about a day later. We agreed, and we both took the high road and made amends and didn't go to court. So, men, building a better world, and we're going to get into some of the specifics of the blessings that God has given us to do over the course of the last 12 years. It's our Christian example that we give men that can build a better world. It's just not giving of our time, our talent, and our treasure, but sometimes it's given us our witness to people and what it is. Why did I tell you that story? 3 months later, I got a phone call from a friend in the business. He said, Jay, the individual that we had just reconciled with, is very sick and he's in the hospital. I called Jay up that day, and Jay had stage 5 lung cancer. And I remember that conversation I had with Jay, and he said something along these lines, as he knew he was going to be dead within 2 or 3 days. And he said to me, he said, Jeff, he said, I've met a lot of Christians in my life. Many of them wore crosses. A lot of them wear what would Jesus do around their wrist. But very few of them love Jesus like you love Jesus. And I'm humbled to even, it brings tears to my eyes to even repeat that, because 2 days later, Jay died. JMJ's Site Development Men, I want to start off by saying this. First letter of the Corinthians, chapter 3, verse 7 says, it is neither he who plants nor he who waters is anything, only he who causes the growth. All of the examples that I'm going to give you of blessings, of ministries that God has JMJ participate in on 4 continents, God gets the credit for every bit of that, men. We retain 0 credit for what God has done with our business. And I'm going to start off by, and I don't want to say this, punch you in the face, but at JMJ's Site Development Men, we think that tithing is for amateurs. Okay, we started tithing from the very beginning. Right now, God has blessed us to give roughly 55% of our net income to charity. And we have charities all over the world, from the Philippines to Guatemala, Africa, India, Jerusalem, and everywhere in the United States. And I'm going to give you just a few examples of those, of how God is building a better world through JMJ. We have an elementary school in southern Leyte, the Philippines. For that particular school, we built a stone wall around the entire facility because the animals would come in and attack the kids. A drinking well. We've built classrooms for them. We built them a library and put 3,000 books in it. They just had a typhoon in January of last year that wiped out half of the school, so we're rebuilding half of the school for them. What a blessing it is, these children, these elementary students in southern Leyte, the Philippines. We have St. Xavier Clooney Higher Secondary School in Tamil Nadu, India, that recently we were approached and they needed a cafeteria and a kitchen and a break room for the students that went to the school. They approached us and it was a great blessing of ours. And to be honest with you, man, we're doing that work with the Diocese of Sivanganja in India, and all of the work at that particular school is for Hindu children, not even for Christians children. But God does not differentiate, so neither do we. We have another project ongoing right now in Satharan Sanpadi, India. I had to take a class in phonetics just to be able to pronounce half of the names of the places that we were blessed to do work in. And that particular school, when I found out that these middle school children have to go to the bathroom outside under a tree or over in, behind a wall, I just thought that was completely unnecessary and undignified. So we built them a huge restroom facility that they use until today. The next biggest project that we have, probably the biggest one that we've done in the last 12 years, is a ground up facility in Nairobi, Kenya. It's a 15,000 square foot school, 3 stories, and it's going to be for roughly there's 20,000 homeless families in Nairobi, Kenya. And when they showed me pictures of children that were huffing glue because the parents didn't have any food to feed them, that's just unacceptable, man. So this is going to be a huge 2 to 3 year project that we're going to be doing in Nairobi, Kenya. We do work in Solola, Guatemala, with the Hands of Healing ministry. They have medical, dental, and visual help that they provide to the local Mayan children. Excuse me. And we've been blessed to, we send doctors down there and nurses, and we treat these children with dignity. And we're working with the local schools to help them stay in school and providing scholarships for them so that they too one day can be a missionary doctor or nurse and help others in need. No, those are just a few examples, man. I could be here for 2 hours giving you examples of what God is doing around this world with our humble little construction company. But I want to give you an example, one here close to home. I had a friend who is a friend of a friend who introduced me to an individual who's in the Air Force. He has 5 children. 2 of those are typical children, and then he has 3 younger children one has Asperger's, one has autism, and another has a different atypical syndrome. And he approached me one day and he told me about a story that he had with a local pastor about his children. He went in to see this pastor, and the pastor met with him and fielded his concerns. And at the end of the meeting, the pastor said, we can take your 2 typical children, John, but we can't do anything for the atypical ones. And when he was telling me this story, 6 months after it happened, a tear rolled down his eye. Well, then guess what, man? A tear rolled down my eye too. Because God has plenty of money. All he needs is somebody to say yes. Okay, And here we are 11 years later. Cutting Edge Learning Academy is a school here in Riverview, Florida, specifically and only for atypical children. When God writes straight with crooked lines, he doesn't ask for our opinion. He just asks for our yes. So those are just a few examples, men, of how God has used our humble little company to build a better world around, on 4 different continents, essentially. But we've learned many lessons over the years. I can tell you a few of them. A rich person is not someone who has the most. It's the person who needs the least. We've learned that loving people and using things is much better than loving things and using people. And it's that dignity that we show to others is a worthy example of Jesus and Christianity. I've learned that I kiss up to VIPs. I do. I knowingly and willingly do that. Not very important people, but vulnerable and impoverished ones. Because that's the mission that God has put on my heart, is to help the needy children all over this world with the little blessings, the great blessings that he's given me, and the little trust that I have in him. So, man, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to close. I want you to focus on building eulogy virtues wherever you are at in your business life. If you own a business, if you're just starting out, no matter where you're at in the spectrum, on the business spectrum, understand that every day of your life, you should be working on building eulogy virtues, those virtues that'll carry you into eternity, and not resume virtues. Don't worry about how big a car you have and how big a house you have and what country club you belong to, man. That's not going to get you into heaven, okay? It's eulogy virtues that are going to get you into heaven. The greatest honor that I can give to my family and my legacy is to be a man of sacrifice. See, the Hound of Heaven took 40 years to catch up to me so that I could focus my energy and my attention on him, because he had bigger plans, men, in store for me. Because he not only wanted me to focus on him, yes, and I do every day. I pray 4 hours a day, and it's not enough. I've been going to daily mass for 15 years. It's not enough. I go to confession once a week. It's not enough. I'm a broken pencil, okay? But what God wanted me to do, and what he's allowed JMJ to do in building a better world for other people, is to focus on the needs of the least, the last, and the lost of our world today. And it is such an honor and a blessing to serve him. I'm eternally grateful, and it's been an honor to share time with you here today. And I just, as you put your head on your pillow tonight, man, no matter where you are in your financial life, I want you to ask yourself, are you putting eulogy virtues in front of resume virtues? And if you're not, wake up tomorrow morning and just say, Lord, what is it that you need me to do? God bless you, man, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jeff. That was incredible. I've got a bunch of notes yet again. I love how you began and talked about kind of how you started things out and trusting in the unholy Trinity, me, myself, and I. And one thing that just really struck me, and I'm blessed to know you personally, is that trust in yourself has shifted radically to a radical trust in God. That's what I heard throughout the whole talk, is just your radical trust in God, even to the point that you're now giving 55% of your profits to charity. I love the line about principle above principle. Love people, use things. VIPs are vulnerable, impoverished people, and those are the people that you kiss up to. I love that. Um, and build eulogy virtues, not resume virtues, by being a man of sacrifice. Jeff, amazing job. I have a question for you that came in when we sent out a survey, as I mentioned earlier, prior to today's Heroic Men Summit, the Gospel of Work, and got this question that came in from Antonio in White House Station, New Jersey. I think you answered a lot of this, but would like you to expound upon it a little bit more. How do you balance running a business and striving to make a profit with being Christ-like?
Wow, that's a good question. Dan, and great question, Antonio. For 40 years of my life, I had always focused on what can I do for my own self-interests, right? And I think a good example of that is the rich young man, right? He approached Jesus and he said, I follow all the commandments. And Lord, what do I need to do to attain eternal life? And Jesus says, go sell what you have, give it to the poor, and come follow me. I don't think that Jesus wants us to be broke. He doesn't. He gives us our daily bread. And he didn't want the rich young man to be broke, to be broke or to go away unhappy. It's our attachment to things, Dan, right? So what I did is, instead of focusing on luxury jets and SUVs and all this stuff, I focused on being the best Christian Robin Hood that I could be, right? God has given me gifts and talents to use. And what I tried to do is I used those gifts and talents, Dan, to maximize the amount of money that I can pull from those who have too much money, okay, and take that money and direct it towards the poor. So for me, I never quit being aggressive to make as much money as I could. I just decided that the end result of that wasn't going to be my bank account and my brokerage account and my retirement account, but it was going to go for people that I'll never meet. The vast majority of the children that we serve on 4 continents now, I will never get to meet one of them. But you know what? I've got to meet the guy who can see around the corner and who does see them. And that's so I've never taken my emphasis off of maximizing my ability to make money. It's just the end result of it, Dan, is what is different now, because it doesn't. How much money do we need, man? Elon Musk, Dan Donaldson, and Jeff Joaquin, all 3 of us are going to have the same checking account balance 5 minutes after we die. It's going to be $0.00. So I have decided that the only way that I'm going to be satisfied with my life is if I can give as much as I possibly can to those who are in need and who are impoverished. And so Christian Robin Hood is the answer to that. Continue to take from the rich. It's just where the money goes that's important. The destination is what's important.
I think about that, Jeff, just in terms of taking from the rich is taking from ourselves. And one thing, and 55% tithe that's pretty significant, and especially for those of us that might be struggling to get to the 10%. But here's the thought, gentlemen: is what about 1%? Going back to Matthew Kelly's his first talk, what can we practically do? And maybe think about this. Add 1% per year. What if we all did that, gave an extra 1% of our income away each year? Start out this January 1, figure out how much you gave percentage-wise last year, add 1% this year. What if you do that for the next 10 years? That's amazing. Jeff, Amazing talk. Wonderful job. It is a blessing to have you with us. We're so grateful for you taking the time to share with us. So thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you. God bless you.